Miss Jamie Lyn Wallnau. It's Wallnau.
You said it right. It's like a miracle.
It's all good. You know, we practice these things. So, Jamie, my friend from ACU, my ACU sister, I'm honored to have you here. So, I usually start with the same question, and I will with you, but before that, I feel like you deserve a little something different. So, I want to highlight the fact that not only are we friends who go back to Abilene Christian, we've stayed in touch intermittently, but you have such an amazing platform that you've been platforms, I should say, Set Apart podcast, The Next America, right?
Yeah.
Your YouTube channel and Facebook platform with that. Just very vocal. Your Christian heart, your faith has always been out front. You've never wavered. You've always been the same you in that. And I'm really honored to have you sitting there. We'll get into some of those venues that you've been expressing your faith and your creative side, your artistry, but to take a step back to the original question, welcome to the patio.
Thank you. I'm so happy to be here. I love Donovan.
Well,
real champ. It's such an honor.
And what brought you here?
You brought me here. With everything that's going on, I would say, I know that this is going to be shared publicly, but my husband and I have more responded privately to just the climate on racism and what's going on. Like I've been on the phone for hours with my black friends, and nobody has responded the same. And seeing you do patio sessions, I was like, oh my goodness, I love Donovan. I'm all about this. I want to support this however I can, but also I want to see where this goes. Yeah. Because I'm ready. I love people so much that I'm not afraid of wherever this would go. And if I could help one person, think about those people. Just, you may not know the person, but they've impacted you by one thing they said. So however I can serve, I feel like this is a ministry you have, and it's beautiful. Man. And so you brought me here because you've always been an outstanding leader, which means you serve people well. And at ACU, you always stood out to me, such a leader and such a man of God. So anyway, to know Donovan is to love Donovan. So you brought me here, and this needs to happen.
I appreciate that. Thank you so much for saying that. So tell us a little bit about your podcast, Set Apart, and then your new show. I'll call it a show.
I'm calling it a show. I'm treating it like a show.
You should. You got big goals here with that. So start with Set Apart. Tell us a little bit about that podcast, and tell us about The Next America and what you got going with that.
Okay. Set Apart is a podcast that kind of, after I got married with Lance, I just always known I wanted to be more vocal and empower people in their faith. And I wanted to empower all people in what it means to be set apart. My life has changed so much since college with God, just discovering Him, experiencing God in really, really real, tangible ways, from physical healing to whatever it may be. So Set Apart is a podcast for people who want to know, no matter what industry they're in, whether it's business, whether they're a stay-at-home mom, whether they're in film, church, education, medicine, whatever it is, where they could tune in and hear people from all different walks of life who are what it means to be set apart in that, because we are called to be set apart. It's in the Word of God. So what does that look like? Because the world shouts one thing, but heaven is whispering another. So what does it look like to lean into the whisper? That's set apart. The Next America show is, I'd like to say it's bipartisan, but I don't know that I could fully say that in the sense that it's an informative show on, I felt this need between now and elections. There's 15 million Christians not registered to vote. And
how do you know that?
Actually, I have it on my phone. Let me answer it.
Take your time.
Because I think that's important. I've just looked this up today. Okay, 90 million Christians in America can vote. 40 million don't vote during the presidential cycle, and 15 million Christians are not registered to vote. And that's according to My Faith Votes initiative. So the reason why I created this is because I don't care what political, I don't like divisive language, left, right. As a believer, I couldn't tell you that I am this party. I vote policy. I vote my Christian values. So most people, I don't like the idea of people letting mainstream media think for them, and then oftentimes I don't know how misled we are. And when we're in school, we learn the importance of doing research and finding the source and being able to back it up. So I love media. I think it's an incredible tool that God gave us, and I want to use it well. So we're informing people. I have people come on, like this Gen Z girl who started We the People was this last week, and she came on and schooled us on why it's important to know the Constitution. I'm learning so much about what I don't know while doing this. So,
I can attest to that.
Yeah, okay?
Yeah, I can attest to that.
She's like, if we don't, it's just like Christians with the Word. If you don't know the Word, you're gonna get, it's gonna lead to sin. If you don't know the foundation of the Word, really, like the world will get you, and somehow later on, one way or another, you can fall. But if you know the Word, you know what's God and what's not. In America, if you know the Constitution, you know how to fight for it or not. And so, as crazy as it is, and as unequipped as I feel, I'm bringing people on to be informed and to inform others so that they can hear what's going on and vote their values and empower people to think for themselves and make a decision. So we'll talk about both platforms leading up to elections, why we should vote, why we should register. And so it's helping people think, don't listen to the rhetoric, we're not voting in Jesus. That's not our government. We're not voting in our pastor. I'm sorry, your pastor is not running for office, and I don't know that your pastor should run for office. So it's kind of
Probably
like that
should not.
feel. Yeah. So all that to say, it's that's The Next America, and it airs every Sunday at 7:30.
Yeah, on Facebook, shameless plug, y'all check it out. 7:30. Go ahead, give a shout out to it. Next America.
Shout out, Next America
7:30
show.
on Facebook every Sunday.
It's on it's on my Lyn Wallnau public page, and then Lyn Wallnau YouTube account. But Instagram, if you want facts throughout the week and short videos, it's The Next America Show.
The Next America Show on IG. Thank you. I'm not following that, so I will.
Yeah, it's brand new. It's a week old.
Thank
You're
you.
good.
That's awesome. Okay. So, can I read something from your Next America tagline
Stop it.
that I thought was interesting, and I want to springboard from it. Okay?
Yeah.
Part of your, I don't know if it's a mission statement, maybe it's your mission, but this is the description of the Next America. Part of it says, to educate Christians on what's happening in our amazing nation and how we can be a part of it. What we do today will determine the next America we are living in.
Yeah.
So, I want to ask you a question, and this is from me.
Yeah.
As I read that, how it showed up to me, and I want you to answer this. So there seems to me that there's strong nationalism in the tone of that statement. I think even the optics of your profile and even your YouTube page, like just very strong national image, right? So one, let me ask you why. And the follow-up to that is, how do you think that shows up? So, and as you unpack that, like how you want it to show up versus how it might show up. Because honestly, like when I wrote this question, I was thinking of how it shows up to people of color.
Yeah.
So when I see, especially now, I'm really struggling with national values. We didn't celebrate 4th of July. Like I've never felt connected to that, especially this year. Like if anything, I am unlearning so much, and the things I've learned in truth about this country have me not very prideful about America. So that's just my spiel on how that showed up to me. So first question was why, and then how do you think it shows up, and how are you trying to make it show up?
Before I answer that, how would you define nationalism?
Me, I would define nationalism as just a strong sense of pride to the United States of America.
Okay, yes. I totally could see right now, not one black friend of mine is responding the same as another, if I could point that out, first of all. Or white friend. And for me, I do have national pride. And it's called The Next America because I think about all the hidden voices right now, like you and me, who just love people. And who love the hell out of this world, who are like, I love you, and beyond our differences, I'm gonna love you, and I'm not gonna hate you because of who you're voting for. That is like, biblically speaking, in 1 John, if you hate for your brother in your heart, the Father is not in you. It makes me want to cry. Like, I don't ever want to hate somebody because that means I'm separated from God.
Hate takes a lot of energy.
It does.
It does.
And,
oh my gosh.
And social media is a powerful tool, but it's also a very powerful weapon. And it's safe to hide behind a screen and say things. I'm sure we all hear this all the time. It's easy to talk behind the screen, but would you say that to somebody's face? Which is why I like this.
Facts.
So for me, when I think about the next America, this is an amazing country because of every American that I know. I consider you an American, and you're amazing. And we may not have the same values and beliefs, but I love you, and I know that we could love each other beyond that. So when I think about you, Donovan, and I think about your wife, and I think about all my friends who are from different streams and places of life, however connected, there's gold inside everyone, and if we just focus on throwing people's weakness out there and get caught up in weakness, it's easy to not have pride. And I'm not saying that you're doing that. I'm saying there's so many different ways you can answer this because we're all so uniquely made, and we all have such a different history personally that brought us to where we are right now. So for me, I mean, I could totally see myself running for office one day in God's timing, but I just love people, and I want godly principles in our country. And when you think about it from heaven's perspective, God's not mad. God loves this country. He wants what's best, but it's a choice for us to choose that and to walk in it. And if we don't do it, we won't have it. But if we do it, we will, because he gave us free will. So that's what I think about the next America, is a generation that's hidden right now, that's waking up, because a lot of Christians are angry because of what mainstream media is showing us. They're not doing the research, so they're not informed. We don't actually know what Biden's platform is or Trump's platform is, right? We don't know because we're not taking the time to find out, because we're just taking the time to be mad. But I can't throw away my vote when I know that God says this in his word, and possibly one of those candidates has a handful enough of those that I, Jamie Lynn, value enough that may be different than what you value. I want to exercise my right to vote, because I want America to be amazing. And if that means that this president that I'm going to vote for has the values of heaven that I believe in, and that he showed me through his word and in friendship with God, then I'm going to go vote. And I want to empower people to do that. So I have American pride because I think all people, no matter how much they're hurting, no matter what their experience is, we have a choice to build from right now, regardless of what's happened, but our history is important, and we need to be informed on it, because we need to learn from mistakes that have been made and from great accomplishments that have been made. But right now, to where we're headed, I don't want to be in an old folks' home thinking, I wish I would have sounded the alarm. I want to be the one that's like running with you, and I'm like, aren't you glad we sounded the alarm? So that's what I think of.
My thoughts. You know, there was a dissonance in my spirit when you said God loves this country, because I'm very confused. As I told you, to say that doesn't mean I disagree. Okay? But I am very confused, and it's something I'm wrestling with. And actually, my neighbor, he's an amazing man of God. He's in the clergy with his belief system, and just an amazing guy. He came over here, sat here like a week after George Floyd was murdered, and he's like, Donovan, I'm racist. And just like, forgive me. And I was like, wait, what? And their family's been nothing but amazing to us.
I just got chills.
That was a whole, I mean, and he's been amazing, and he sent me this thing, because I reached out to him like, bro, I'm really struggling right now. It's like a couple weeks ago. All of a sudden, I was telling my wife about it. Like, I was thinking about slavery, and I was like, how did this even happen? Like, who sat in a room and said, like, we should go and get people against their will to come build this country? And then how Africa? Like, there had to have been amazing infrastructure, wealth, beauty for you to go over and be like, yo, we want that. Or if they were crawling around making unintelligible sounds and spitting on themselves, like, you wouldn't see that as a labor force. That could be, right? So then, how do you then capture them, right? There's a couple of different ways. It could be forceful, but if you use force in that first Inquisition or whatnot, you would think they're going to be smart enough not to. So then, did you have, people on the inside that would sell their own family? And like, I was just my mind. So then I'm thinking, okay, but then this country was built on this, and then 400 years, and like, look where we still are. And so I literally just took a step back, and I was like, God, I've been asking a lot of whys. I was like, why? Like, why can I not trace my, you know what it feels like to not be able to trace your genealogy, but 3 or 4 generations? Like, I have no history. And so, like, I think I see it through a different lens. Just, you said something about sin earlier, and I think my perspective would be, something was unleashed a long time ago that set forth this tidal wave, and there's consequences.
Yeah.
But, you know, I'm a black man, and it's like that. Like those had to fall on me, right? Those had to fall on my people. So, I love what you said about everyone has gold in them. I really believe that. I also love that you said, you made me think about something I posted where you were like, you don't have to hate people because of who they vote for.
Yeah.
And I made a very, that was a very incendiary maybe post recently, past couple of weeks, where, you know, I straight out said it, like, listen, if you vote for Trump, I was like, one, you should keep it to yourself. I wouldn't publicize that, because you got to understand the rhetoric from that man is truly, in my opinion, I think a lot of black people share this, Jamie, direct opposition against the value of our humanity by the rhetoric he spews, right? And so if you can get behind that, for whatever reason, I can't personally rock, doesn't mean I gotta hate you. But like you won't be, you know, in my circle, like we won't be, but I won't be like F you, like that, you know what I mean? No, it's nothing like that. But like, at what point do I start to draw a line for my own humanity, my own value, my own, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And people who want to advocate and walk in that. So that's where I stood on that. But I had a question for you. I wasn't gonna ask it,
Go for
but
it.
you kind of went there because you said that, you know, you're voting for your values, right?
Yeah.
Do any of these two right now front runners, talking Trump or talking Biden, do any of those like align with your values?
Mm-hmm.
Can you tell me a little bit about who and why?
Yes.
If you feel like going there.
I'll go here.
Mm-hmm.
I'll go here.
Yeah.
Yeah. I am pro-life.
Mm-hmm.
I'm pro-life, and I know things the mainstream media doesn't share about the current administration. I feel the same way you do about rhetoric. I personally believe that rhetoric says a lot about somebody, but I think actions does too. And for me, though, I hosted a series on God TV called Life Matters about pro-life.
Mm-hmm.
I think we kill more babies a day than we lost in 9/11 in a day. And look at how 9/11 affected our entire nation. Yet, every day, a baby is... And here's the thing, I know everybody has different beliefs here, but I just really value life. And I think the core of that goes back to understanding valuing ourselves, too. But life, I'm very pro-Israel. I believe that biblically, we are to love Israel and support Israel and protect Israel.
Mm-hmm.
Those are my two highest values at the moment. I can't vote for somebody who supports killing babies in the womb. I can't. And we can break it down, and you can break it down. Well, what if this happens? What if this happens?
Mm-hmm.
Bar none, period.
Mm-hmm.
I do not support murdering babies in the womb. So regardless of your rhetoric, and I really had a point, I would say I had a point several months ago, which I'm very honest about this on my show. I just looked at my husband and I said, I don't know who to vote for, because so many times I can't stand what comes out of someone's mouth. Because it's not holy, and it's not pure, and it's not set apart, but they're also not my pastor. So when I look at what has actually happened, I would say I don't support what comes out of either mouth. But I also don't believe in criticizing people, so I want to be really careful on how this goes. I believe, truly, this is so way more personal than I thought it would be. And I'm like, do I want you to even put this on here? Because
we can always take it out, don't worry.
Well, let's go here, because I don't want, like, why would you ever group me with a presidential candidate when I am who I am? Like, if you knew that I didn't like anything else, but I could not stand the thought of voting for a man who was okay slaughtering babies in the womb up to full term. And that was the one reason why I put my vote in as a woman who couldn't vote for so long, right? But like, now I get to vote as a woman too. But if somebody hated me and didn't take the time to ask me because you thought that I was a racist because I was supporting everything about that man, that concerns me. Because that's not love, that's hate. And to me, that's hate, because there's so many people who say things, I'm like, man, I don't agree with that, but I would never not invite you over for dinner because of that. Now, if you were like murdering people, or you know what I mean, like, a pedophile or something, like, for real. Like, no, clearly not. But, like, I want to see abortion, and I want to see family values. I want to see dads in households with, I don't want to see single moms anymore. I want to see family units strong. And it's so much more than pro-life. So for me, I would say right now the best way Jamie Lynn could communicate it is that, like, I believe that life starts at conception, and I vote for life in the womb.
Mm-hmm.
And it's hard for me. You're not going to see me rocking a Trump 2020 hat or Trump 2020 tee, and I think that's okay. And I think it's okay that people don't share who they vote for. But also with what you said, like, think about Jamie Lynn. If you looked at me and said, Jamie Lynn, I can't have anything to do with you anymore because you told me you're voting for Trump. But, like, if you saw and you knew why, would you still say that?
You ready for me to answer?
Yeah.
As passionate as you feel about pro-life,
Yeah.
is the exact same passion I feel about Black life.
Yeah.
And for the sitting commander-in-chief, leader of the free world, to say that Black Lives Matter defaced Fifth Avenue in New York City, like, that, those types of remarks, like, he hasn't said, to my knowledge, I haven't seen any great remarks about John Lewis, one of the most prolific civil rights
Can I look
leaders.
something up while you're talking?
Sure.
I'm listening to
Yeah,
you.
100%. And so for me, Jamie, like,
Yeah.
you feel just as strong about all the babies that are being lost every day. And I feel that about all of my brothers and sisters that are getting slaughtered at the hands of police, without repercussion, without recourse, and with impunity. Because I am Trayvon Martin. I am Ahmaud Arbery. Like, I am George Floyd. And so, like, I hate to say and understand, like, it's not, like you said, it's not hate, but, like, do you know what it feels like to have to, like, jog and take one earphone out because, yo, this could be me? Like, the terror that I've experienced on my police encounters, and the terror my parents have been through, and we've lived with this, and that's one of the reasons why, like, sharing these experiences has been so powerful for both sides, because people don't understand the trauma we've lived with. We've lived with that, and I have codified my behavior, my language, my posture around the white majority in order to be more successful, in order to be less threatening, in order to be less intimidating, and in order to have a fairer chance at just living a life where my life's not a threat because of the color of my skin.
Yeah.
And so how can I can't fathom if my neighbor would willingly harm or be abusive or espouse bad language about people just walking by the street, like walking down the sidewalk, and I knew that about him, I'd be like, I wouldn't fool with him, right? And if me and my other neighbor are cool, and those two have a connection, and he knew that about him, and especially if it was towards people of color, but he just kind of let it slide, or like, but that's just how he is.
Yeah.
Oh, but there's so many other things that he does. Oh, but he believes this. That doesn't absolve you from the fact that you've chosen to align with somebody who does not value my very existence, right?
Yeah.
And so I think I love this conversation. It's not an easy one, and it's not easy at all. But the reality is, like, we are literally sitting on two separate sides of a very polarizing person, climate, all of that. And for two very different reasons, we see it very different ways. And so I think I'll just kind of stop my part of that by saying it does come back to what you say about love. And I've been evaluating that statement. I've said, just because I posted something 2 weeks ago doesn't mean that I can't have a new perspective, right?
Yeah.
But, like, just right now, Jamie, like, I've never really drawn any lines, to that extent when it comes to, like, Black Lives Matter and all that. But I'm tired of, like, I was there with Mike Brown, like, I marched, I've cried, I've cried. I've like, I can't operate. There's not a paycheck. There's not a status. There's nothing in this life right now more important than me than Black life, and that truly being something that is elevated so that we have a level of equality. Not we need pity, we need, 20% off on Uber Eats. Like, I don't care about none of that. Like,
Yeah.
I'm talking about for our humanity to be recognized. Like,
What does that take? What is that solution to you?
that's interesting. Before we get there, I just feel like I should say this, because where do you think I stand on where candidates voting?
I have no idea. I don't think we can know unless we have a discussion. But like I'll be honest, and I know it doesn't probably. I know that this can ruffle feathers, but I do not support and would never put $1 towards Black Lives Matter. But Black Lives matter to me, and we can start back to Janie Lynch's childhood and talk all about it.
I did. That's another question.
Do you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Like, I will not put $1. What have they actually done for Black people other than what we see that's happening? Like, they have had over $1 billion donated to them over the past 7 years. What have they done with the money?
See, and I think it's important to contextualize that, because even my wife and I literally were talking Sunday morning about, hey, where we're going to give to.
Yeah.
And I was like, I would like to give to an organization behind Black Lives Matter. I think it's a little too ambiguous to just say Black Lives Matter.
Mm-hmm.
And I think when people hear you say something like, I won't give $1 to it, probably should contextualize that a little more.
Right, to the actual organization, but totally to support Black lives.
And
yes.
I think that's the thing, is it's very nebulous. Like, I don't even know. And even when the NFL came out, it was like $250 million to next 10 years to Black Lives Matter, and NBA this time. I'm like, but where's that money going? Like, that's the thing. Where is it going? I live here in Dallas.
I think. Isn't it?
I don't know. Honestly, I haven't even. We can look that up.
Too. That's another thing, is like talking about something we don't know about isn't healthy until we can get the facts.
So the point I was making with the Black Lives
Yes.
Matter, you're good, is my neighbor just sent me something about they're organizing. He's helping to organize something locally. It's called like Dallas Now or something. And they're developing an entire infrastructure around, and with Black and white clergy, with like this is something tangible. This is something that's going to be here. This is something that's going to affect our community. This is something that I can get connected to. So that's when I say, like, because I feel you, like, I'm not just going to go on some website and throw money at something because it says Black Lives Matter.
Yes.
I'm not doing that.
Yes.
I don't know where that money's going.
Yes.
Let me see, let me touch it, let me get involved.
Yes.
If anything, I'd rather give sweat equity. Like, money goes so far. So
that's
I feel you when you say
you.
that. So I just wanted to contextualize that. 'Cause if I heard that without any more context, I think I'd have been like, what
but context is key. That's the thing.
Yeah.
We have to have context. That's what's so dangerous about social media. We have to have context.
Yeah,
like if I just read one line,
100%.
like do you know how many times I grew up in the Bible was quoted about women not having a voice, but it wasn't in context about the church they were directly.
100%. 100%.
Or I wouldn't be here.
Yeah. So to answer your question, what do I think would we went a roundabout to get
Sorry
here,
about
but
that.
no, you're good. Come on now. How do I think equality will come?
Because we need solutions. I think your show is a solution.
I think.
Or patio sessions.
So hey, there's a YouTube channel. We can call it a show. I think I don't know the answer to that question. From my perspective, it is this. It's exactly. I think the same reason that you have your platform, and the reason that you felt connected to your platforms and using your voice, is because unless you have an experience of people. So I'd even push back on. You've mentioned a couple times like you like to have numbers, statistics, the facts. I don't disagree. But I heard something on this podcast that Jonathan actually. Have you heard any of his episodes?
I didn't even know he had one.
Yeah, it's amazing.
Sorry, King.
It's amazing.
I called him King.
Yeah, King, you gotta.
I love you. I miss you.
So check you out. But his last episode, he had a young lady on in Spain who does sounds like she's been doing some really cool things for a while. Where she has like these dinners and she brings people together around food. She focuses specifically to like the disenfranchised or the marginalized and the queer community. She said something that made a lot of sense. Was like, there's a lot of value and weight to statistics and numbers, but a lot of times, especially if people don't have access to the information, it's not fair to hold people to that. Right. But like, we all have experience.
Yeah.
And we all have experiences, and they're all valid. And like you said, we're all human. And for me, it is being able, if I can have a part in helping somebody recognize my perspective and my humanity as a black man through my experiences and through my traumas and through how I've been experiencing certain moments, I think that can create a ripple effect that can then help educate that person to see the next black person specifically, because we're talking specifically about my perspective, to be either a little less guarded or you know, a little less prejudiced in their minds on, you know, what, because I can now give them a perspective of what we might be thinking when we walk up behind you or when we're right. And so for me, the way to achieve equality, I can have a direct role in that. Now when it comes to policy and things like that, I don't have a lot of faith in any, I don't care what side, left, right, whoever's at the top, because things don't seem to trickle down to us lowly little peons down here.
And we can do a lot more. There are so many of us that can do so much more outside of a government position than we could inside one. So I love that you said that.
You mentioned that you and your husband have been a little more private in your conversations as it pertains to like the climate, but I want you to expand on that a little bit. I'm curious as to why the privacy. But since the murder of George Floyd specifically, which has kind of jumped off this national conversation in the midst of a pandemic, not a lot of distractions, no sports, no, right? So it's up front, it's in all of our faces. How have you been experiencing this moment in this America, in this climate?
That's a great question.
Well, thank you.
I would say it's easy for somebody to get on and give their opinion, and it looks like they're doing something online, but what are you really doing around the table with people? My friend Eniola, she's African American, her family's Nigerian, and then my friend Marin, we invited them over to our house. So this George Floyd thing happened the week we were moving. So it was like we were not on TV, we kind of heard about it, and I like really grieve, I have a lot of empathy, and it was wrong. It takes an evil person to say it wasn't wrong. I actually don't know of one person who has said that was not wrong. Like, I actually don't. I mean, that was wrong, what happened to George Floyd. And I think it brought our nation around, but it also reawakened wounds that are not healed. You know, and it's reawakened blind spots in so many places in America, and it's revealing where we are. For my husband and I, it's been more like phone conversations with our friends of color. It's been having them over, spending the night, talking, and just listening. Because I have I mean, and we can get into this later if you want to, but my experience and my husband's experience are different as white people, yet we're still white when it comes to black and white. I just think it's a lot wiser to listen, because I'm not black, and I want to know how my friends are doing. And what I find through this is that, you know, I have one friend that's like, her response is, I have to be real with you, like, I could sit here in my flesh and this is her reality. I could sit here in my flesh and tell you I'm hurting and why this is wrong and be upset, but I actually have to come to you as a daughter of God. I'm not black, I am black, but I'm first a daughter of God. And that's where my identity comes from. It doesn't stem from being black. Now I am black, but when I think of being a daughter of God, I can't get worked up and I can't get mad, because that's like my inheritance. So that's one response. And then, you know, another response is, we had two friends over and one's crying and I'm crying with her because she's like, this is my brother, this could be my brother, and it's the first time you're hearing this, and I'm repenting to one of my friends who the way she would communicate in the past was angry, and I'm trying to understand, and there was like this dialogue that wasn't, part of that's just not seeing each other's heart too in dialogue. I think it's careful to, if you can't come in low and loving somebody, you don't need to be having the conversation, but
come in low.
Like humble, like I'm here to listen to you. I don't know your experience and I don't know what you're gonna say, but I love you and I care about you, so I'm listening.
Gotcha.
Right?
Gotcha.
Like, other than, or you come at each other like, but you're wrong, but that's not how it is. But that is how it is for that person, you know? So for her it was like, I just repented and told her, I said, I feel like, I could cry again. I said, I feel like you've been coming to me over and over again, telling me you're hurting, and I haven't heard you till now, and I'm really sorry. And that was with her. Whereas my other friend that I was talking to for hours, he's married with a wife, and they have kids, and he has a totally different perspective. And then I talk on the phone to this man that's about to be on my show. He's like, I have a totally against the grain theory. He's a black man. It's like, and he's in his 40s. And it's like, I have a totally against the grain theory on all of this that's going up in our nation. And so as a white woman, I'm listening, and I'm just hearing all, and you're different than any of these other responses as well. And it's unique, but it's because of your experience and history.
Right.
And he would say, you know, when you give your life to Jesus, you become one race, and that's equality. And I'm like, I can't wait to hear more. But he pretty much dropped that bomb and was like, let's talk about it. And I was like, you're coming on the show, let's talk about it. So I can't say one is right or wrong. I have to go to the Word of God, and I have to meet you with love and humility and listen to you. And I believe during this time that we're going through, I want to be part of a solution, because we hear about the Israelites in the desert. God was providing for them. It was supposed to be like 11 days. And it ended up being 40 years, and they never inherited the promised land because they were complaining. And what I don't want to see in America is us complain as a nation when there's a solution, where it's like, I want to have a thankful heart along the way. It doesn't mean I'm not crying. It doesn't mean something's not hard. It doesn't mean ignoring the realities of what's going on. But it's trusting the Lord to know, you have a solution you're giving us, and I want to be part of it. So what does mine look like? And for you, it's patio sessions right now. Because there's a wisdom of the world that will breed hate and evil. But when we gave our lives to Jesus, he gives us wisdom from heaven. And when you read about wisdom in the Bible, if you think of her as a person, you want to be her best friend. She's like legit. But wisdom is what laid the blueprints for the world, and understanding is what showed how to lay the world. And then knowledge showed where. So like, I want to be the one who receives wisdom of heaven while I'm listening, and if I'm yelling and shouting and telling everybody how I feel about this, I can tell God that, and I can tell my friends behind the scenes what's going on, and I find that way more valuable than me shouting on the rooftops and not putting in the work. It's like a person who's running for office who says, I'm going to do this, this, and this, and doesn't do it. We don't want
they
that.
all?
No, but you see what I'm
Every
saying?
politician ever.
So you see what I'm saying? Like, I don't want to be a politician of racism. I want to be the woman who's listening and listening to the Lord and saying, well, what are the solutions, and what do I play in that? And he has given me solutions in that I'm really excited about. But and it won't happen overnight, but that's where my husband and I are at, I would say, right now.
That's a very hacked answer.
Yeah,
In
sorry.
a good way. No, don't apologize,
It
please.
is, it's just where
don't
we're at.
apologize.
And it's been such a long, not a long time, but it feels like so, because we're not busy right now, there's so much more we can do. So there has been so much more time to reflect and listen.
Your faith
Yes.
is clearly something that I say that when I made a note, I was like, people say people wear emotions on our sleeves. I think you wear your faith on your sleeve.
Thank you.
Always have. Even to the point where in school it was like, okay, she can't be like that like all the time. Like seriously, I remember kind of having those thoughts, and then it was just like after a year or two in, you're just like, this is Jamie Lyn, like this is 100% her. So, give us a little bit about like maybe it's probably a long journey as most of our faith is. You kind of touched on grad school, right? Was it like a turning point?
Yeah.
So maybe kind of bring us up to that moment. And how your faith has become so important, and then how it's showing up in this current moment now. So give us a little bit of your faith history. And,
I'll bullet point it. I always grew up knowing God, always talked to him in my head, never talking to myself. Like, I never thought I was talking to myself. And I grew up Church of Christ. So like when I was taking a test and I was like 2 + 2 is 4, I was talking to God.
You always believed that?
Yeah, that was my normal. I didn't know that wasn't normal until my senior year in high school. Greg Pirtle, shout out, our youth pastor, I was talking to him, and he said, Jamie Lyn, that's called continuous prayer. Like, you're in continuous prayer. I'm like, what? Which made sense, because I would sit in church, which I'm grateful for my church upbringing, and I always thought there was something more, and I could tell when they would not read controversial scripture. And we were going through the motions in church. It was very Bible-based, but like, I had a real thing with God, and I had a dream about heaven when I was little and met all these family members that I didn't know existed. And so I explained it to my mom, and she's like, that's this person. It was very detailed.
Wow.
Yeah.
And you had never met him?
No, like, God was handing my aunt her baby. I didn't know she lost her baby however many days after he was born, and he said his name in the dream. Like, very deep, very descriptive, very detailed. Family members were waiting for us on the other side of the gate. We were lined up by age, getting ready to go. It was like really detailed. So that shook my paradigm, because my mom responded with, well, what do you think he's saying? Which nobody talked like that in my church. So we always had so I always was close to the Lord. Getting to college, I visited a place called IHOP, International House of Prayer. And I was like, people were moving in the prophetic, and I was sweating. I was like, are you mind reading? Are you fortune telling? I just felt so uncomfortable. I was sweating, but they read my mail and said things that only the Lord knew about me. And to detail, things that were happening at ACU that they had no idea about. And I'm like ICU teaching sheet music to hundreds of women, and I just became sing-song director. Like things that were like, God's wanting you to know, I see you, and then there's like an encouraging word with it. And that scared me into realizing, okay, this is weird, but this is God. Yeah. And so I get into grad school, I go to an art retreat, and I get baptized in the Holy Spirit. And I got delivered from my biggest fear of my entire life, literally in a moment. Like, could feel fear leave my body, and just begin to grow in these spiritual gifts.
Can you share that fear, or is it a little
personal? I was petrified of dead bodies. Like, I couldn't say it in my head, couldn't look at them on a screen. If we drove by a cemetery, I was paralyzed. Couldn't tell anybody, didn't want to say it out loud, because my mom told me, if you say your biggest fear out loud, the enemy will use it against you. And I asked her, I learned this from Carly Dodd in family communication. So many families just pass things down. What up, Carly? So many families just pass things down generation to generation, and he tells all these cool stories why, and we're laughing in class, and I realized my mom said, oh, well, just because I was told that. But really, that was crippling me because I couldn't say it, and I was afraid I would be put in a room with dead bodies or something if I did say it.
Wow.
So I say it out loud, and it was the first time in 20-something years I'd said it out loud. And they prayed for me and surrounded me, and I got delivered, and then I ended up studying abroad the next summer in England, where we went to cemetery after cemetery, and I was kind of petrified, but not like before, and now I'm like, whatever. I was just at a funeral yesterday morning, and I'm standing in the cemetery, and it's nothing, no fear at all. So, but that was God, and that's what God did, because I submitted my heart to Him and said, I want all of you. So I am the way I am now because I've been reading the Word, and either it's true or it's not.
How's your faith guiding you through, these times right now, right? That's the
COVID,
race, injustice, race. Yeah, I think specifically to the racial narrative.
Let's talk about it. Yeah. I cannot know without Him. And it says in 1 Corinthians 2 that no eye has seen, no ear has heard, no mind can conceive what God has planned for those who love Him. But the second part of that is, except it's revealed by His Spirit. And I see what's possible with God. But I also, He's so good that He gave us a choice to choose it or not. So during this time, I recognize people who are mad, that's usually the step after hurt. So I recognize people who are mad, I'm like, I always have compassion for a victim. I also really have compassion for the person of what happened in your life starting at childhood when you were so pure and innocent that got you to where you are today, who treated you so poorly that you got here because you clearly never knew Him. Because if you really knew Him, you wouldn't be doing what you're doing, right? So I look at the response of the Black community, which is not the same across the board. From if I were to take what I personally, what my friends have all said. Yeah. Now the mainstream media is going to paint a picture, and it makes me wonder statistically what that percentage is that they're even delivering, because there's so much good happening right now. There's so much good, but you're not hearing about it. And that would give people hope. And so during this time, we can't get through it without Jesus. We can't. And I recognize not everybody is a believer, but I'm just saying, as believers, I genuinely cannot get through the pain, the hurt, the anger, the violence, the paralysis, that so many people are experiencing right now without Jesus, because he is the answer, he's the way, he's the light, he's the truth, period. And if the word is true, then that's true. He's truth, capital T. I don't want the little truths of the world. I want the truth. And he has the answer. And who better to know love itself and be persecuted, spit on, beat beyond recognition of even what sex he was, and still choose to die for us. So even if somebody came at me because they didn't understand, no greater love is this than one who's willing to lay down their life for their brother, for their sister. I want to always be on that end. Mm-hmm. And to me, that's not violence. It's not hate. I love Martin Luther King Jr. Like, he is like, he wasn't afraid to shake things up. Mm-hmm. He was, like Jesus got mad even at the temple and flung the table over because people were making money of it. He's like, that's justice, but it's not violence. It's not hate. So I look at this and I'm like, what would you do right now? Because what you would do through him is going to be different than what you do through me. Yeah. But I'm responsible for me and responding the way that you've called Jamie Lynn to respond, in the purest form of being holy and set apart. Yeah. So that's how it's affected me. And I do believe the Lord has given me a solution, and I think that the root is children. Okay, I have to go there. I want to do a children's show for kids, and I want diversity up on the screen. I used to cry because I couldn't imagine a little black girl looking at the screen and only seeing white kids. And I grew up crying because I wasn't black. And my whole family thought I'd marry a black man. Mm-hmm. I love rap.
Why did you cry? Because you weren't black?
I only liked the black boys. And I didn't see, when I say I don't see color, of course I see color. I was drawn to black boys, and that was not wrong to me. And I never recognized that being anything, like literally, I can't even, Clifton, LD, Lawrence Brown, Hakeem. I mean, I could go through KJ. I could go through the list. Sorry if any of y'all are watching. But I just liked black boys. I came home one day, I was like, Mom, Dad, I met a boy today at school. His name is Lawrence Brown, and he's what, Jamie? Brown. Like, I just loved him. Like, this is little Jamie Lynn running around. Like, so for me, and I have a black baby doll, and I brought her, but I'm like, I did not have the same feeling. And until 6th grade, when one of my teachers looked at me and asked me why I was dating someone, which is when you're walking down the hallway saying hi. That's when you're just like, hi. It's like, what does that even mean?
Passing notes, whatever.
Totally. Yeah. Like, until she said, oh, and it's not because he's black. Instantly I knew, it's because he's black. Like, I just knew. That's exactly why you're asking me that.
What did she ask you again?
Like, why are you dating this boy? He's this, he's that. And it's not because he's black. It's because, and something in me for the first time that pierced the purity of like, wait, it is because he's black. Like, and I don't know how I knew it, but I've always was super discerning when I was little, but it took till 6th grade for me to even hear a comment like that. Yeah. So I feel like getting kids at an early age, showing them how beautiful every color is, how unique, talking about, showing them what they need to learn, and it being pure, and it being valuable in character and nature and equality, having dolls of all colors for them to get that isn't just their color. Yeah. Like, I have this black baby doll that my little girl...
Let's see it. You keep talking about it.
This is so personal.
Let's see it.
This is so personal.
Okay, so explain that.
So I went to the store with my grandparents when I was little, and I was like, they were like, pick out any doll you want, and I was like, I want that one. And they were like, oh no, which one do you really want? And I was like, no, I want that one. This is so vulnerable. And
this is your childhood doll.
My grandma was like, no, are you sure you don't want that one? I'm like, no, I want this one. And I carried this thing around, made people cry, because they thought it was so sweet. I didn't think anything of it.
No offense.
Oh, go for it. Oh, no. I didn't. But yeah, I didn't think anything of it.
That's your childhood doll?
Yeah.
Black doll. You know, it's funny because as we sit here, you and I have a history. I know your heart. The way you talk, you don't mince your words. The passion that you speak when you talk about Jesus, you're not afraid to use his name, talk about God, I think there's a small faction of people that would think you are crazy.
Yeah. Yeah.
But the thing that y'all gotta understand about Jamie Lynn is she's really about this life. Like, this is not putting on.
What you see is what you get.
Oh my good gosh. It's like you just rewound the clock. What is this, 2020? We were in school in 2000, we graduated in 09.
Yes, we did graduate in 09.
So like, you just rewound the clock like 15 years. It's like, Jamie Lynn's energy is not dissipated, your passion is not, like, this is really who you are. And I want to speak that because that's part of recognizing our humanity. I want to say this to uplift you, to say, like, it's refreshing. And I think for anybody who is comfortable from where they sit and who they are, even if you don't agree or if you have other perspective, passion is contagious.
Yeah.
And I would hope that part of the progress that can be made in this nation can be from people who can receive passion.
Yeah.
From somebody that might be on the other side of issues that could divide people, but could say, you can't deny that heart. Yeah. I can't deny that person's humanity, right? So now, and I'm saying this from a personal level, like, this is going to make me reevaluate maybe some of the words I choose.
Yeah.
And maybe maybe the posture I have. Your passion has invaded my soul and spirit in a very refreshing way, and I want to thank you for that.
Thank you.
I love that. I wanted to go back.
Yeah.
You mentioned Martin Luther King. I'm learning a lot about Malcolm X.
Yes.
What is your perspective of Malcolm X?
From my understanding, we just did an interview with a girl named Karina, and I learned more about it.
I saw.
So they had a similar goal, but Malcolm X, to my knowledge, so correct me if I'm wrong, they wanted equality, but he said by any means necessary, including violence, paraphrase. Mm-hmm. And I feel like, if I'm correct, later on realized that wasn't the way. And that the way was, I mean, when is violence ever, somebody shows up to your door with a weapon on the front porch and they're crying out for help, you can't hear help, you just see the threat. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. But if somebody shows up to your front porch and is like, hey, I need help, can you help me? I had to do that the other day. Walking in a neighborhood, didn't feel safe, had to walk up to a door and ask the neighbor if I could come in the house because of the way I was getting looked at, which happens to me every time I go walking, by the way. So I never feel safe walking or running outside. That's a totally different story. And I'm not saying it's the same story either. But I had to, it's like, hey, I don't feel safe right now. There's somebody who stalled their car to stare at me. Can I please walk through your backyard to mine, And that is met a lot easier than hysteria, violence, right? Mm-hmm. And so I would say Malcolm X, I'd like to learn more about him, but what I understand is, and please correct me if I'm wrong, violence was okay, and then maybe he had a change of heart down the road?
Yeah, so that's the interesting thing, Jamie, is I fell in love, like everyone else, with what we were taught about Martin Luther King, and he's a national hero, and in no way is he diminished. But what I realized is how uneducated and how biasly, if that's even a word, educated I was about Malcolm X, right? Yeah. We believed and were taught and seen and heard the speeches, and we can all say I have a dream, and we can all say nonviolent, peaceful protest, and and that's how he sparked change, right? Martin Luther King. And then Malcolm X was always seen as this radical, by any means necessary. That quote is always used, and it goes back to, like, there's no context for that. Right. And I'm learning, so I'm reading his autobiography. But my wife and I are actually we watched the speech on 4th of July because we're no longer celebrating 4th of July. Mm-hmm. That's another thing. So we were like, well, what can we do to commemorate this day a little differently, right? Like Juneteenth is going to be our thing going forward. Mm-hmm. Something I never celebrated traditionally growing up. Yeah. So we watched that speech, the ballot or the bullet. Even the name of it sounds intimidating, threatening. Malcolm X never preached violence. He never preached weapons. I mean, that was against the Nation of Islam. Taking away, he never carried a gun, never carried a knife. So I was about to buy a shirt that had Malcolm X with like an AK-47, and it was out of stock. And I'm glad because once I started educating myself, I was like, this dude never even preached guns. Like, how ignorant would that have been for me to wear a shirt like that, right? Like, I had to learn that. And so that goes back to what I've been saying. I've said it a couple times, like, I'm unlearning and relearning, because what I've been taught, and shame on me, I haven't done my own research and spent the time to educate myself. And like you said, now we have time, and we got the space to do it. So no, and it's not about, I don't think correcting is the right word, because I'm learning, but from what I've learned so far, a lot of his character was taken out of character in so many ways, which led to the split of the Nation of Islam, which led to the CIA and the Nation of Islam assassinating him together.
Really?
Yes.
See, this is to me, this is what is the most powerful. Like, hearing you say this is so applicable to today. Who wrote our education books? And who's controlling the narrative in media? And I'm not trying to jump into conspiracy theories, but I'm saying I know way more about what's happening in America from away from the mainstream media than I know. And then hearing that, I'm like, that, and I'm open. I'm like, okay, cool. I love that you're reading his autobiography. Like, that interests me to know more about him. And I think that's what's so, that's what we have to recognize, is what we're seeing isn't always what's happening. Because you're handed something from somebody else, but you're handed from them what they want to hand you. Yeah. And it may be the icing, and it may have no cake underneath it. Yeah. So, like, we just don't know. Yeah. That's cool to hear. I love that you're reading that.
But what's next? What's next for Jamie Lyn? And what do you think is next for us as a nation?
Well, what is next?
Falls in line with your show, right? The Next America.
It's true. We're what's next. Like, for me personally, I am, like, on a very personal level, writing a book. My first book.
Nice! Congrats on that.
Thank you. And then I'm doing the Next America show, and I'm treating it like a full-on TV show, like the way that I prepare for it and whatnot.
The way it's produced, the quality's top-notch, your guests are top-notch.
Thank you, and I'm being really careful about that. And for us as a whole, I just see God raising up voices that are set apart, that are filled with love and truth, like, that are being led by wisdom, that are the solution. That I think, you know, there were several years where people were just dogging on millennials. Millennials this, do you remember that? And you notice it kind of stopped a little bit, right? Yeah. But our words have so much power. Like, I do believe what we speak. I mean, the Lord spoke everything into existence, right? If we're made in His image, our words have power. And I got delivered from depression. So I don't mess around with dark words. I'm very well aware of them, because it led me somewhere very dark. And for me, I believe we have to declare what we're going to do and what we want to see, but we've got to be willing to work together. And we have to recognize that even with racism, and I know I'm a white girl saying this, but I'm a human being saying this. Can we break it down to that for a moment? Like, as a human being, we cannot all do everything. Jamie Lyn Wallnau cannot end sex trafficking, in abortion, in everything she's passionate about. You know what I'm saying? Like, end racism. I can't.
That's so
can we just appreciate the fact that just because I, as a human being, I cannot get distracted by somebody else's narrative. I can appreciate it. Like, you have a field and I have a field that the Lord has given us, or that in life, whether you're a believer or not, you've been given something to maintain and value and bring strength. And oftentimes it'll feed the masses, your crop, your field, right? And if you're not being faithful with it, how are you going to feed those around you? But I can come to your field and you can feed me from your field. That doesn't mean I have to labor in your field with you. But my laboring may be coming and listening to how you've labored and having respect for how you've labored. And I believe God's calling up a generation right now who will recognize what fields that they have in front of them. And I believe that the harvest is going to be beautiful, and we're going to have solutions. We're not going to be complainers. We're not lazy. I think that's why there was so much warfare over us as a generation. I believe we are going to have solutions to change. We're not going to complain. We're gonna recognize where our passions lie. We're gonna come up with the answer, and we're gonna be part of the answer. And we're gonna respect each other, hopefully. And evil will always exist. It's like evil will always exist, and we can't let ourselves get distracted and marinate in evil at all, because it just breeds evil. So That's what I see.
Yeah.
I have so much faith and hope in our generation.
But you also said earlier that you have a dream or a vision of teaching kids, right?
Yeah, I
So
want to do a
them,
TV show for kids.
and
Yeah.
I think you said it beautifully. Like, if you get them, right?
Yeah.
If you get the next generation, like, that
Yes.
could literally end.
We have to think that way, Donovan. Like, we have to think about the ones that will take on, when we're too old to be able to labor, that we've helped show them where it's important to labor and where it's not important to labor, right?
Yeah.
So, yeah.
I love that, because one of my friends, we did like a virtual patio session, and one of my best friends, he was in my wedding, he lived 4 houses down from me, and we talked last week, white guy.
Yeah.
So I said that for context, but he told me, he was like, I think, bro, like, we have to give up on the older generation. He was like, that's his opinion. So I think we got to give up on it. It's like, they won't change, they're set. I can see, I try to be objective, like, I can see where it's coming from, but like, I never want to, I'm just always a glass half full. Like, I think if somebody could, even if they're the footholds of their heart, like, don't change, but even their actions or a small percentage of their mindset shifts, like, that is still something. That's worth something. It means something. But I see where he's coming from. On both sides, older white generations, that's what I think of mostly. Like, they won't change. I see, I'll be honest, what I see if I'm in social settings and there are older white men or older white women, I feel a very certain way.
Yeah.
I feel that they perceive me a very certain way.
Yeah.
If I'm driving, my music's loud, I can feel it. Like, it's not even paranoia, it's nothing. I can feel it. But I also can say that I understand when my dad specifically, he's a Jamaican immigrant. And he's black.
Really?
So he has,
I love Jamaica. I was
He
there
has,
for 2 weeks.
Yeah. I can see where he's coming from. He's got it as an immigrant. He's had these experiences, and then the times he's been arrested, or not arrested, but pulled over and called the cop and all of that. And so then he built this, now he has this callus. How could I expect for him to all of a sudden just, not carry those wounds and those scars, right? So I can see it on both sides.
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
I can see it on both sides, but yeah.
Side note, when I was in Mozambique for 3 months, I was walking down the street and they were yelling a phrase, and I was like, hi! And it was the N-word for white people there. And I was like, repeating them. I was repeating the word, like, yeah! Learned real fast.
Oh, how'd that make you feel
I was actually the first white person that a lot of villagers saw out in the bush. And I was sitting there, and these kids and these women were just touching my skin. They were just like, my hair. It was so cool to me. I thought it was the most pure, beautiful thing ever. And these guys were like, is it okay? And I'm like, this is totally pure and fine. Like, I'm the first white person they've ever seen. And it was nighttime, so like, I'm bright. And they're just like feeling the texture of my skin, the texture of my hair. I just thought it was such a cool moment to be a part of that. Yeah, I loved it.
When did you go? Was that in college?
It was summer of 2012. For 3 months, I lived in Mozambique. I did a ministry school there, but it was like the bush. Like, didn't have water for over half of the time, so we had to take like bucket showers. And then it was like these missions too, where I couldn't tell my parents where I was going because the last mission they had to leave quickly because it was dangerous. It was like that kind of school. Yeah. It was cool.
Wow.
It was really cool.
I don't put it past you. That doesn't surprise me at all. That does not surprise me.